came a carriage drawn by 3 strong horses, and riding in the carriage sat the wealthy brother. The wealthy brother had everything he needed in his life, and as the sun was westering out on the hills, he noticed an inn perched on the top of one, and so he ordered his driver to take him to the inn. In walked the wealthy brother. He brought a fine meal and a soft feather bed in a warm and comfortable room, and he fell asleep. But not far behind him came his poor brother. His poor brother had no carriage, but simply rode upon the back of his mare, and she was heavy and walking slowly. And since he had no money, he pulled his mare into the barn where the innkeeper said he could sleep. And with no meal, he tied his mare next to the wealthy brother's carriage. But during that night, miracle of miracles, his mare gave birth to a little foal, and the little horse stood upon its unsteady legs and then promptly fell beneath the wealthy brother's carriage. Well, the next morning the wealthy brother came out, saw the fine young horse beneath his property, and said, "Well, brother, look, my carriage has given birth to yet another foal." And his poor brother said, "But, no, brother, no, my mare, no, brother, my carriage, dear, look, take you to every judge in the land until I get it." And so it was, the 2 brothers began to go before judge after judge, all across the land of Russia. No one could decide himself. The Tsar listened to the drums on either side pound as the flames in his giant palace chamber torched. Then he sat on his throne. He had heard of this argument between these 2 brothers and had summoned them. Trembling on the floor, they looked up at him. He was magnificent, dressed in ermine with a giant golden crown. And they each told the Tsar what had happened with the horse. And the Tsar sat back and said, "Well, frankly, I don't care which one of you is a liar or which one of you is telling the truth. However, I like riddles. Riddles, yes. And so whichever one of you brothers can best answer my riddles, he shall be given the horse. So listen. What is the swiftest and strongest thing in all the world? What is the fattest thing in all the world? What is the softest thing in all the world? And what is the loveliest? Now both of you go and bring me your answers here tomorrow morning." Well, the wealthy brother ran in one direction and the poor brother ran in the other. One got on his horse and the other just ran for home. They didn't know what to do. Now the wealthy brother racked his brain but couldn't think of a single answer to the Tsar's riddles. So he went to his godmother. She was a clever and worldly woman. And he walked up to her door and knocked upon it. And it opened, and there she stood, and she said, "Oh, godson, come in. "Thank you, godmother." He ran in, she served him tea, and he told her what the Tsar had said. Well, she sat back and thought for a second and said, "Well, I think that the swiftest and strongest thing in the world must be your godfather's piebald mare. Why, the horse is so swift, none of the other horses can catch it. The swiftest and strongest thing in the world. And as for the fattest thing, well, that would have to be the speckled bull. We've been fattening it for 3 years. It can barely move. And as for the softest thing, oh, nephew, everyone knows what that is. Eider-down pillows, eider-down blankets. The softest thing in the world. And as for the loveliest, it would have to be my little nephew, Ivanushka. He's only 3 and he's adorable and I love him. The loveliest thing in the world. And knowing no better answers than those, the wealthy brother took those to his dreams. Ah, but the poor brother, he had no worldly godmother to consult. Instead, he made his way back to his little hovel where he lived with his daughter, Vasilisa. Now, Vasilisa was only 7 years old, but she was an exceedingly clever child. And as her shadows danced about the light of a candle that made her arms look like the wings of the blackbird, she watched her father walk in and said, "Papa, why so glum?" "Oh, Vasilisa, the czar has posed me riddles and I don't know how to answer them." "Well, what are they?" And he told her the riddles. And the light of wit began to sparkle behind her eyes. And she looked at him and she sang a little song. And I invite you to sing it once I've sung it for you once. It's this. The morning is wiser than the night, Papa. The morning is wiser than the night, Papa. The morning is wiser than the night, wiser. That's a song, that'll come back. And so she went to sleep. And the next morning, she jumped out of bed and ran to her father and said, "Papa, I think that the swiftest and strongest thing in the world must be the wind. For when it blows, nothing can stop it and nothing can catch it. And as for the softest or the fattest thing in the world, wouldn't that be the earth? For although there are so many of us upon it, there's always room for one more. And as for the softest thing in the world, I think that must be our hands. For even if we sleep upon an eider-down pillow, we fold our hands and we put them here. And as for the loveliest thing in the world, I think that must be sleep. What's more lovely than sleep when you really need it?" And knowing no better answers than those, the wealthy brother took those to the czar. And the drums pounded in the chamber, and the czar watched the two brothers walk in and said, "Quiet with those drums. Very well, what are your answers?" Well, the wealthy brother told the czar his answers, and then the poor brother told the czar his, and the czar looked at the wealthy brother and said, "Wealthy brother, yes, my czar, go away. Pardon me, go away." And out of the chamber ran the wealthy brother, not to be seen in the story again. But the czar narrowed his eyes and looked at Vasilisa's papa and said, "Good answers there, you. But surely you didn't think them up. Look at you, you're a simple fellow. Someone told you those answers, didn't they? Tell me the truth, you cannot lie to the czar." The poor man trembled. "Yes, great czar. I'm sorry. It was my daughter, Vasilisa. She's only 7 years old, but..." "What? Only 7 years old? And she thinks she can match wits with the czar of all the Russias, does she? Never." And at that point, the czar noticed at his cuff there was a tiny loose thread of silk dangling free, and he plucked it off and he gave it to Vasilisa's father and said, "Take this little bit of silk and tell your daughter who thinks she's so smart, by tomorrow morning, out of it she must weave me an entire silken towel. Now go." Home he ran, trembling and staring at the little bit of silk. And he burst into his hovel, and there, though, was Vasilisa dancing around the light of her candle. And she asked him, Papa, why so glum? Oh, Vasilisa, look. And he told her what the Tsar had commanded that she do. Well, once again, she sang, the morning is wiser than the night. The morning is wiser than the night. The morning is wiser than the night. Oh, the morning is wiser than the night. Wiser. And she went to sleep on it. And the next morning, she jumped up, ran outside, and brought in a little twig. And she gave it to her father and said, Papa, take this little twig to the Tsar and tell him I said, if in one day of all the wood in this little twig can build for me a perfect tiny loom, then I will weave him a perfect tiny towel upon it. Tsar did not like that. What? She said, what? Well, that's very clever. There is no child who shall outwit me. There. You bring those eggs here. At that moment, a servant was walking across the throne room with a basket full of 150 fresh eggs from the hatchery. Give those eggs to this fellow here. Tell him, well, no, I'll tell you. By tomorrow morning, see these eggs here? Your daughter must hatch them, raise them to full-grown chickens, bring them here cooked for my breakfast. Now go. And once again, Homie ran, his heart pounding, trying not to break the eggs. And he pushed inside, and there, as always, was his daughter dancing. And she said, Papa, why so glum? Oh, look, he showed her the eggs and told her what the Tsar had commanded that she do. But she sang once again. The morning is wiser than the night, Papa. The morning is wiser than the night, Papa. The morning is wiser than the night, wiser. And the next morning she rose and she went to a drawer where they kept their millet, which is kind of seed to make a bread and a broth by that the Russians eat a great amount of. And she sprinkled a few little grains of millet in her father's old hand and said, Papa, take this millet to the Tsar and tell him I said that if in one day his very best farmers can plant it and raise it and grow it and harvest it and mill it into millet meal, I will feed his one day millet to my one day chickens. She said, what? She said, what? Blast! Blast! Very well then. I wish to meet your daughter here at the palace tomorrow morning at first light. What? She must come here, neither on foot nor on horseback. Let's see, do that. And she must come here neither dressed nor undressed. Let's see, do that. And she must bring me a gift that is not a present. Go. And so home he ran. One last time she sang her song. But then she needed to do things quickly, and she said, Papa, go to the sea and buy a fisherman's net. And then go to the hunters and buy the biggest live rabbit that they have. Oh, and while you're there, buy a partridge and make sure that its wings have not been clipped so that it can fly. Her father looked at her. Vasilisa, this is the czar. This is the czar you're playing these games with. Papa, I'll go. And so he went. And the next morning, the czar stretched and looked out across from his balcony to the gates that led to the palace. And that's when he saw something. What? She's early. Oh, blast it. My robes! My robes! Someone bring me my robes! And the servants ran in and dressed him down the long marble stairs he ran. And open those gates, he called as his robes flapped behind him until they opened up. And he stopped and stared at what he saw there. And he looked and said, what? You're Vasilisa, aren't you? Yes, great Tsar. That's what I was afraid of. How did you get here, child? Well, she'd been hopping along the road with one foot on the back of the giant rabbit and the other one on the earth. Why, you're neither foot nor on horseback, are you? No, great Tsar. What have you done with your clothes? Well, she'd taken them all off, but she'd wrapped herself around and around and around in the fisherman's net. And the Tsar had to admit, oh no, you're neither dressed nor undressed, are you? Well, no, great Tsar. Well, no, great Tsar. I've got one more. What's that? Down close to her side, she held the partridge, and she said, for you, O greatest and wisest of Tsars, a gift. But before she could lift it up, she let it go and oh no. It flew off before it could be presented to me, didn't it? Little girl, I know that you and your father are poor, and you live out there in the world somewhere. What's that like, to live out in the world and to be poor? Well, my papa, he fishes for fish in the middle of the dusty road. And when he catches enough, I make fish chowder in my shoes. What? No, that's impossible. No one can do those things. No more impossible, would you say, than for a carriage to give birth to a foal? And the old Tsar just looked at her. No more impossible at all, child. I would have given your father the horse all along, but I was having so much fun doing riddles with you, I lost track of things. Forgive me. I hereby declare that this little girl's father shall have his horse. And you say, why don't we invite him here to the palace? I'll make him the royal master of the stables or something. He'll have more horses than he knows what to do with. And as for you, Vasilisa, on account of your wit and your courage, I invite you to come here, live here too. Raised as a great lady, travel the world as you see fit, for you are a wise little girl.